The Heliophytae is a clade of moss-like organisms, few centimeter long, that attach themselves firmly to the rich organic substrate of the wetland or decaying wood with a screw-shaped root. They grow in very dense mats and serve as food for many species of grazers as well as a refuge and hiding place for countless smaller species. They are often found bathed in a humid steam. If earthlings were to encounter them, they would find them quite tasty in a salad. The Lunophytae is a clade composed of giant trees that are somewhat primitive since they are related to Arcophystulophysea. The species that make up this clade are very common in wetlands and they are central in this ecosystem. They reproduce by forming shoots and can live up to 5,000 Vekia years. They like their roots to be immersed and are very efficient at pumping water upwards. The leaves are in fact like collecting tubes filled with an oily and sweet substance. The trees can reach 80 to 100 meters in height and are home to countless species. They continuously diffuse light from their canopy. The Bryophytae is a clade of moss-like plants that like to grow in very wet environments. They grow from a creeping stem-like structure that anchors itself firmly on rocks. The rhizoids that anchor the plant also absorb the minerals it needs. The Bryovasculophyte is a clade of moss that is in transition, evolving from moss to vascular plant. The moss has a fibrous texture, reminiscent of cotton. To reproduce, the plant grows a gelatinous and luminous fruit on a stem from which animals can ingest it. Once ingested, there is a strong chance that the seeds will be disseminated more widely. The Floriparasitophyte is a clade of small rootless plants that need Bryophytae as a host to get the nutrients they need. They benefit from the sugar and minerals without giving anything back to the host. They are devoid of any chlorophyll, and their remarkable whiteness illuminates the dark recesses of the swamps. The fruits are an absolute delicacy. The Milioflorophyte is a clade of plants easily identifiable thanks to their pom-poms made of multiple small luminescent flowers. The pom-pom is perched on a stem, half of which is bristling with prickles. The other half is coated with a slippery wax that discourages animals from climbing on it. The sticky seeds are often spread throughout the swamp by small flying creatures. The plants can reach 10 meters in height. The Florobulaphyte clade is composed of plants that stand out with their colorful and luminous fruit encased in a glass bubble. The bubble protects the fruit from the elements and wildlife so that it can reach maturity undamaged. When the fruit reaches maturity, the glass bubble dissolves, exposing the ripe fruit so it may be eaten. The following season, the cycle of the single fruit begins again. The plants grow in humid environments. The Ligophyta clade consists of long-stemmed woody vines that root in the ground and use trees, as well as other means of vertical support, to climb to the canopy in search of direct sunlight. They produce luminous spores through a special organ at the base of their leaves. A large leaf can reach the size of a man and the liana can reach up to 50 meters in height. The Tristyphaloriphyte is a clade of succulent plants with up to 10 long erect, oil-filled and pointed leaves in a very dense rosette. The largest species can grow up to 15 meters long, are sword-shaped, extremely thick and leathery. The plant has a brilliant drooping blossom that is quite fragrant, giving the clade this name. The roots of this plant are edible, in contrast to the bitter leaves. The Mysorrhizophyte are a general group of green plants that are most identified by the tangle of roots at the base of the plant. The stem of the plant is a tube filled with oil. The leaves that grow on the stem protrude outwards. Bush-sized plants in the Sagittaphyte clade are distinguished by their arrow-shaped leaves. Many species have stems with stunning and distinctive patterning. Their roots produce oil-rich and starchy tubers of bluish color in the ground. Hyssophyte are small simple generic plants. They are connected by a network of roots and prefer to grow in very humid and poorly drained areas. Polydophyte are common green plants that sprout in confined areas. A single bent leaf is carried by each stem. This leaf can be oriented ensuring that it receives a maximum of Vexal's light. The aquatic plant group known as Aquaphyte is found floating on the surface of small bodies of water. When the leaf opens, a tasty fruit bud that has been floating in the center of it is revealed. It is stiff enough for tiny creatures to walk on while still maintaining its buoyancy. The Novaculophyte is a clade composed of plants resembling thick vines. They are climbers that are adapted to rise vertically by leaning and coiling on a vertical support, usually a stronger, more robust plant. The stem is similar in composition to that of cacti, and because of that fact they are relatively fragile. To defend themselves, Novaculophyta are covered with a resistant bark but also with incredibly sharp razor blades. These blades generally play the role of repellent for the large animals which prefer not to touch them. Rosivesiculophyta is a clade of algae that thrives in wetlands with moderate currents. They are topped with shiny pink bladders, and the goo inside is delicious and oily. The Pompavermidae clade is made up of several species of semi-sessile sap-sucking worms. For feeding, they anchor themselves to a trunk or a stem and draw nutrients from it. If needed, they can move from place to place by creeping, but they do so with difficulty. They much prefer to stay in the same spot for long periods of time. To protect themselves, they have dissuasive spines and are capable of retracting into a defensive position. They also pump a surplus of sweetened and condensed sap through their anus to attract caregivers and other helpful creatures. The Hystrosivermidae clade is formed by species of worms armed with a shell covered with long spines. The species of this clade have a behavior similar to terrestrial snails. However, unlike snails, their shell is not hard but rather has the texture of a hedgehog and is quite supple to the touch. They are more of a nocturnal animal and feed on detritus and vegetation. It is not uncommon to find them hiding under rocks or in small hollows and cracks during daytime. The Irisovermidae clade is formed by species of poisonous walking worms. They are practically defenseless, but if eaten, they will release a deadly poison out of their flesh. In order to make other creatures aware of their deadly potential, the Irisovermidae display luminous and colored protrusions along their back. They feed on detritus and vegetation and are most active at dawn and dusk. The Spicatestivermidae form a clade of worms specialized in necrophagy. They devour everything that sinks to the bottom, and when the meat runs out they can survive for a few months on decaying vegetation. The Pholiomimicidae form a clade of invertebrates belonging to the family Quadrivalvidae. They camouflage themselves in the manner of seahorses by taking the form of algal leaves, most often of the Rosivesiculophyci family. When they reach adulthood they feed on algae sap. In their first stages of development they are way more mobile and move in small and compact schools and feed on plankton. The Pholionymphidae clade is formed by swimming Quadrivalvidae adapted for life in the more acidic and lower oxygen waters of the swamp biomes. They feed on drifting detritus and filter the nutrient-rich water. They camouflage themselves as dead leaves drifting on the surface of streams and ponds and are very capable of swimming and hiding underwater if necessary. The Omnividentidae clade is made up of tiny flying creatures about the size of a flying insectoid, and they occupy a similar type of ecological niche. They have a very wide range of size and shape, and the species that form the clade can differ from each other. Unlike other Quadrivalvidae, the Omnividentidae has 4 pairs of eyes, which allow them to have a peripheral vision in flight. 4 slender legs allow them to cling when they are at rest. Their adult stage upper abdomen are filled with sacs of gas lighter than air that help them stay airborne. Mature individuals emit flashes of chemically produced light from their lower abdomen to attract mates. Upon emerging from the egg cluster, the first stages of their lives are spent in larval phases within slow-moving bodies of water. During the first 2 larval stages they feed on plankton, while during the last stages they became more phytophagous because they have developed the necessary appendages for shredding organic matter. The last stage of their life is aerial. Their feeding habits are quite diverse depending on the species. Some feed on fruits, flowers, sap, leaves, nectar or wood. Some odd species choose to specialize in eating carrion, dung, flesh or blood. The Electoidea is a clade of tiny swimmers that feeds on sub-centimeter creatures and attracts them with a luminous organ. They live in small and dense schools. The Foliopisidia is a clade is formed by fish that take the appearance of dead and drifting leaves. Their camouflage is very effective against predators. Thanks to their particular mouth apparatus that acts like a vacuum cleaner, they feed on the algae that grow on the surfaces of dead branches and submerged rocks. Plecopisidia is a clade of fish that feed mainly on detritus and small creatures that they find buried in the muddy bottom of small freshwater habitats. Their bodies are covered with bony plates that help shield them from predators. The Nacipisidia form a clade of voracious predatory fish which are also solitary. When hunting, they wait peacefully on the sedimentary bottom before swooping on their prey like a torpedo. The Microquadripteronidia is a clade of small, truly avian creatures. They are extremely agile with their double pair of wings and double tail. The coloration and larger size of the males differentiate them from the blander females. To feed, they collect the sweet oil provided by the different plant in their environment with their extensible tongue while hovering. They form flocks of fairly large size, which has its benefits, such a better chance to avoid predators. The Tenebraquadripteronidia is a clade of flying and predatory creatures that feed on various small critters. Their dark color allows them to go unnoticed when they hunt. Some species are even specialized in fishing. Thanks to their extensible tongue, they can pick up a scent from several hundred meters away and locate their prey. Their tongue is sticky and if a critter gets stuck, it gets swallowed up as a meal. Tenebraquadripteronidia form couples that last a lifetime. They communicate by light signals thanks to a luminous organ located on their head that they can switch on or off. During the nuptial parade, this luminous organ is on full display. The Cineraequadripteronidia form a clade of large flying creatures living mainly in the swamp biome. Cineraequadripteronidia are necrophagous animals. They feed almost exclusively on dead animals, and often on the carcasses of large animals. Their long, fleshy, and muscular tongue is equipped with sharp fangs that allow the creature to debone flesh and is mobile enough to bury itself in the least accessible cavities of carcasses so that the Cineraequadripidia do not stain their fur with blood. They are frequently observed in couples. They are oddly silent in flight despite their size. Scirrholutumidia is a clade of small wetland creatures. They have a broad, muscular tail that allows them to swim in short bursts. They are amphibious and come out of the water when they feel threatened. They can also walk from pond to pond. They are ambush predators that feed primarily on larvae and other small creatures. Sensory hairs grow on their snouts, but a more distinguishing feature is the presence of urticant hairs on their backs, which serve as a repellent to their predators. They dig their burrows in the mud above the water line, lay their eggs and hide their food reserves there. They spend most of their lives in mud, hence their brown color. They really seem to enjoy sunbathing. The Micrognathocarnidia clade is made up of small carnivorous creatures that feed mostly on invertebrates. Their long toes allow them to better distribute their weight in order not to sink into the soft and poorly drained ground. They are curious by nature and rather solitary, but they like to sing sweet melodies in the morning to communicate with their own kind. Despite their innocent look, they are known to be avid meat eaters, and when they pull out their internal jaw, they show their vicious teeth. The Novaculocaudidia is a clade of nocturnal arboreal animals. As their name indicates, a feature that distinguishes them is the series of sharp blades that cover their tails and which play both a protective and camouflage function. They feed mainly on invertebrates and get their water from the oily sap of certain plants, especially from the clade of Novaculophidae with which they have co-evolved. They are also very rarely seen on the ground. Glands located on both sides of its mouth emit a foul odor when it feels threatened. At night, these creatures whistle soft tunes. Each species emits different vibrations that propagate in the air and that our human ears identify as sounds. The Languiaculoidea are a clade of small fishing creatures that use their tongue, which has a very hard tip, as a harpoon. They are very agile and move noiselessly. They like walking in water, in fact that is where they catch their food, but they avoid deep water travel. Instead, They prefer to cross streams and bodies of water by traveling on dead branches and trees or by hopping from stone to stone. They are fairly solitary but can be seen in small fishing groups where one individual keeps watch and receives a share of fish from the others for his services. If the watcher yelps, these creatures are known to run in all directions and hide behind rocks or underbrush, where their fur allows them to blend into their surroundings. If discovered by the predator, they regurgitate a stinky fish liquid that usually deters the predators. Gregarious is a clade of gregarious creatures that have long snouts and that are covered with iridescent green fur. The species of this clade are terrestrial and semi-aquatic, inhabiting dense marsh forests but still living near bodies of water. Excellent swimmers and divers, the Gregarious travel long distances submerged, stomping on the bottom. They throw themselves into the water when they feel threatened. They are very social species that live in groups protected by a patriarch who is twice as big and more colorful as the female. The male is armed with a bony excrescence on his snout which is covered with thick skin. This excrescence is mainly used for intimidation of potential rivals during the mating season. They are herbivorous, their diet consisting mainly of grass and aquatic plants. The Cyanilabulongicolida clade is formed of graceful-looking herbivorous creatures. They mainly feed on the moss they graze on, but they also supplement their diet with different types of foliage. The males are more colorful than the females, and can be distinguished by the white band on their flank and bioluminescent markings on their back. The male protects his harem of a few females with vigor. When he folds in his lips, the male shows 2 cyan discolorations, hence the name of the clade, that females find very attractive. Cyanilabulongicolida are very agile and quick runners. The Stygioidea is a clade of swamp predators that are very quiet and blend perfectly into the surrounding shade thanks to their black fur, making them virtually invisible to unsuspecting prey. They are terrestrial and prefer to stalk their prey. Stygioidea are ambush predators, relying on stealth and the element of surprise to sneak up on unsuspecting prey. They sneak through brush, trees, and ledges, before making a powerful leap to deliver a suffocating bite to the operculum. Species of this clade can climb trees quite easily and they build their nests in the treetops. Vekia is a clade of solitary creatures that are very territorial and that feeds mainly on nectar. Although nectariferous, they love the fruits of Florabulophyta. They care for and protect those plants until their fruit is ripe. The transparency of the glassy bubble of the Florabulophyta has co-evolved with the Vekia, and the transparency drives them to protect its loot until the fruit is ripe. The tuft of fur on their snout help to disperse spores between plants. The animals of this clade are distinguished by their large size but also by the strange excess of skin between their limbs that covers their body like a sheet. When these animals feel threatened, they reveal a very bright light pattern that discourages predators from dealing with them. The Vekiosobekidea is a clade of solitary superpredators from the swamp biome that are very well adapted to their environment. Their hairless bodies are covered with thick green skin and they have leaf-like growths on their heads, which adds to their camouflage in the vegetation. They also have an extremely powerful jaw. Species of this clade are semi-aquatic and tend to spend their time out of the water, but they can easily swim and ambush prey, just like crocodiles would on Earth. Despite their large build and clumsy gait, they can run fast enough to predate out of the water as well. They usually take shelter in dens that they dig themselves. In fact, their behavior is a mix between a bear and a crocodile. The Multicharasidea are a clade of large herbivores which can be recognized by a number of pointed horns on their head and neck. They are part of the Vekian megafauna and can weigh several tons when mature. In addition to the horns, adults have 2 defensive tusks which, on rare occasions, get particularly long on the elderly. This clade also has beautiful glowing facial displays that help both dissuade predators and attract potential mates. These large creatures usually feed on a variety of algae which they pluck from the bottom of ponds with 2 dexterous, extendable tongues. Females have a strong sense of motherhood and raise their young by themselves while males wander alone in the vast expanse of the wetland forest.